Picture the most famous man in music, a #1 album, a song so big it played at every party, every wedding, every school dance on the planet. He was selling out arenas. His face was on lunchboxes, cereal boxes, and at his peak, he was reportedly worth around $30 million. $30 million. The money was coming in so fast he could barely count it. And then, just 4 years later, he stood in a courtroom and filed for bankruptcy, reportedly around $13 million in debt. Same man. Same decade. From $30 million to less than nothing in the time it takes to finish high school. This is the story of exactly how that happened, and of the one quiet mistake at the center of it that you have probably, on a much smaller scale, made yourself. And I want to be clear about something right up front. This isn't a story about a foolish man. He wasn't lazy, and he certainly wasn't stupid. In many ways, he was one of the hardest working, most innovative performers of his entire era, which is exactly what makes his collapse so important to understand. Because if raw talent and relentless work weren't enough to save him, then whatever brought him down has to be something else. Something quieter. Something that hides inside success itself, invisible until it's too late. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly what it was, and you'll understand why the very thing that made him so beloved is the same thing that bankrupted him. First, the rise, because it was genuinely historic. At the dawn of the 90s, he released an album that didn't just sell well. It rewrote the rules of what was possible. It became one of the best-selling rap records of all time, moving somewhere around 10 million copies. For a stretch there, it felt like you couldn't walk past an open window anywhere in America without hearing it. His signature song was completely inescapable. The dance, the pants, the energy, all of it became a global phenomenon almost overnight. He wasn't just a musician anymore. He was a one-man entertainment industry. Sold-out world tours, television specials, merchandise, endorsement deals, his own cartoon, his own doll. At his absolute peak, he was reportedly pulling in around $30 million. In just a few short years, he had gone from a kid selling stray baseballs in a stadium parking lot to one of the most famous entertainers alive on Earth. He was, for one brief and blinding moment, bigger than the music itself. The rare kind of famous where even people who had never bought a single record knew his name, his moves, and those unmistakable pants. The dream, fully and completely realized. And then, he did what almost anyone who suddenly becomes rich dreams of doing. He decided to take care of everyone. And this is where the story quietly turns. Because his generosity wasn't a small footnote to his downfall, it was the entire engine of it. As the money poured in, so did the people. He reportedly put an entourage of around 200 people on his personal payroll. 200. Friends from the old neighborhood, family members, dancers, security, staff, and more than a few hangers-on. And by many accounts, that payroll alone cost him close to $500,000 every single month. Sit with that number for a second. Before any other expenses, before the cars, before the mansion, he was paying out something like $5 or $6 million a year to keep 200 people employed. Then came the house, a reported $30 million estate, with marble floors, a recording studio, a swimming pool shaped like his own logo. He bought racehorses, luxury cars for himself and for others. He gave and gave and gave. To the people around him, he wasn't just a boss. He was a lifeline, a one-man economy that dozens of families quietly depended on to pay their own rent. From the outside, it looked like a good man simply sharing his blessings. But underneath all of it, A slow, silent mathematical disaster was already taking shape. Here is the mistake at the very center of everything, and it's the reason I told you that you have probably made a smaller version of it yourself. He built a permanent lifestyle on top of a temporary income. That is the entire tragedy, compressed into a single sentence. Music income is not a salary. A hit record does not pay you steadily forever. It pays you in one enormous burst, and then, slowly, it fades. But an entourage of 200 people is not a burst. It is a fixed cost. It arrives every single month, whether or not you happen to have a hit that year. He had wired his entire life so that money had to keep pouring in at peak levels just for him to break even. And nobody, no matter how talented, stays at their peak forever. He hadn't built a fortune that could survive a slow year. He had built a machine that could only survive a spectacular one. And in the music business, the spectacular years never, ever last as long as you think they will. Every dollar of that peak income had, in effect, already been promised to something before it even landed in his account. And then, of course, the slow year came. By the middle of the 90s, musical tastes had shifted, and shifted hard. The sound that had made him a global superstar suddenly felt dated, and a new wave of artists swept in and took over the charts. His next records didn't come anywhere close to the old numbers. The income that the entire operation silently depended on began to shrink. But the costs did not shrink with it. The 200-person payroll still came due, right on schedule. The mansion still needed its staff and its upkeep. The lifestyle, engineered for a $30 million year, kept right on demanding to be fed. And when income falls while fixed costs stay locked in place, there is only ever one possible ending. It is simply a question of when. In 1996, the answer arrived. He filed for bankruptcy, reportedly around $13 million in debt. The mansion that had cost a fortune to build sold for a small fraction of its price. The cars, the horses, the trophies of one of the most historic careers in music, all of it gone. One of the best-selling artists of the entire decade was, on paper, worth less than nothing at all. The fall was so steep and so public that for a while his very name became shorthand for exactly this kind of ruin. A cautionary punchline for a generation that had watched the whole thing happen in real time. And here is why this story still matters, decades later, to people who will never sell a single record. Because his mistake is one of the most common financial mistakes. He made it on a scale the rest of us never will. Almost all of us, when our income goes up, quietly raise our spending to match it. A raise becomes a nicer car. One good year becomes a bigger house and a heavier set of monthly bills. We take temporary good fortune and we turn it into permanent obligations, all while quietly telling ourselves the good times are here to stay. The specific numbers change from one person to the next. The quiet human instinct underneath them rarely does. His 200-person entourage was just an enormous, human-shaped version of that same instinct. Loyalty and love turned into fixed costs that could not be switched off once the music stopped. So the lesson is not, don't be generous. The lesson is this: never let your permanent costs depend on your best possible year. Build your life on the floor of your income, never on the ceiling. Because the ceiling, sooner or later, always comes down. Now, to his enormous credit, his story did not end in that courtroom. In the years that followed, he became an ordained minister. He spoke openly and honestly about everything he had lost and exactly why he had lost it, turning his own collapse into a genuine warning for others. He never once pretended it didn't happen, and there is real dignity in that. But the cautionary tale remains, burned permanently into pop culture history. The man who had everything gave almost all of it away and learned in the hardest way imaginable that no income on earth is ever high enough to outrun a lifestyle with no breaks. If you want to see the exact opposite of this story, a woman who walked away from music at her absolute peak and became far richer off the stage than she ever was on it, that one is waiting for you right here. Watch it next.